this video, I'm going to teach you 5 techniques from George Benson that I promise will transform your playing on guitar. If you've ever felt stuck using the same old scales and licks, or watched Benson play and wonder how he plays so effortlessly, these techniques are what's been missing from your playing all along. My name's Chase Maddox, and I help hundreds of guitarists every day, just like you, learn to improvise and play jazz, and I've been a professional musician myself for over 20 years. This lesson will be broken down into 3 parts. First, I will show you these 5 techniques and explain them so you understand them. Next, we'll look at some specific examples from Benson using these techniques so you know when to use them and when not to use them. And then lastly, we'll put everything together and I'll show you 3 of my favorite Benson lines that uses combinations of these techniques. Before we dive in, if you want to master Benson's complete approach to jazz guitar, I just released a comprehensive master study of Benson, covering everything from his picking, his approach to arpeggios, his vocabulary, song studies, theory and analysis, and much more. And I will be adding exclusive videos on Benson to that course very soon, including a bonus to this lesson that you're watching right now. So if you want to check out more with that, just look at the link in the description, 7-day free trial of Chase's Guitar Academy. So that lick that you heard me play at the beginning, this is a Benson master line. What I mean by master line is we're just combining all 5 of these techniques into one line so that we can really have a big picture view of these techniques and see how they work together. So the very first technique that Benson uses is an even number of notes per string when playing these fast lines. Not always, there's a ton of exceptions, but for the most part, when playing through these fast descending type of ideas, using an even number of notes per string. And that's what we started off with on this lick. So we have, we're coming in on this upbeat. So for that first string, we have 4 notes. Again, we're over C minor, 2 notes, 2 notes, 4 notes. And so when you see your scales in this way of how can I get these to fit with an even number of notes, you can come up with a lot of great fast ideas. And it can make it really, really simple. There's a lot of detail here. One thing I suggest is just getting used to pentatonic scales, because pentatonic scales on guitar have 2 notes per string. So every string has an even number of notes. What you can then do to make this sound a little bit more jazzy is add in just 4, 3, 2, 1 chromaticism, and then back to 2 notes per string. So you can do 2 notes and then 4 notes, and that will give you this mix of pentatonic and jazz. If you're interested in this kind of thing with picking, I have an entire live workshop that I did inside the George Benson master study. All right, let's look at the next technique. So this technique I talked about very recently. It's called the sweep and slide arpeggio. Basic idea is you take an arpeggio, and when you get to that last note, you slide it down a half step, just 1 fret. Now in this case, most of the times when we're sliding, we're gonna slide with the index finger down. There are a few times when you would want to slide with another finger. This is an example, and that's because we're going to set up into the next technique, which I'll get to in a second. But let's just break down this arpeggio. So we're over like a C minor or F7. This is that 2-5 to B flat, and we're playing A, C, E flat, G. You could think about that as F9 type of arpeggio or A minor 7 flat 5. Either way is fine. But when we get to that last note, we slide down a half step. Okay? In this case, it's setting us up for our third technique, which is a pivot arpeggio. Pivot! Benson does these a lot. It's a very common bebop technique to use. It can be very tricky for guitarists to work with comfortably, so it really helps to know which of these techniques lead into pivot arpeggios. Well, now you know one, sweep and slide. So by using that ring finger, what we get is we're set up for this pivot. Normally on guitar, the pivot arpeggio skips a string. That's really important to know. So that pivot jump is usually a jump of a 6th interval. But that's harder to sort of visualize than knowing that you have this string skip, but are on the same fret. So doing this is a pivot. From there, you go up in thirds. Right? So we're going up this. It's a diminished arpeggio. that adds a change in direction that makes this whole line more interesting than if we were just strictly descending or strictly ascending. We jump in a way that sounds really cool. From there, the fourth technique is this 4-note diminished pattern. So not only are we using diminished with this pivot arpeggio, but we have this 4-note pattern. Again, I've talked about this in other lessons, and I also did a full workshop on this approach, again, also in that master study. But it's basically this idea. So you have 4, 3, 1, and then 1 again, slide. So we have the half step, whole step, and a half step. So E flat, D, C, and B. Think about this as coming over F7, or the way I think about it, F sharp, whole half diminished. You don't really need to think about the scale here. All I'm thinking about is that pattern, 4 notes. Again, it's an even number of notes, right? Benson likes even number of notes on the string. And what's great about it is it sets you up when you do that movement of the first finger on the G string. Now we have another 4-note diminished pattern. And we get set up for that. So let me play everything we have up to this point slowly. So from here, the very last technique, and this is something Benson does a bunch over all kinds of chords, but you see it a lot on major 7 chords and minor 7 chords, but a lot on major 7 chords, is what I call double arpeggios. In this case, we're doing a triple arpeggio, but it's using different arpeggios from different chords over a single harmony. So we have B flat major 7, but we're going to play an arpeggio for D minor 7, and we're going to link that. This is the important part of it. We're going to link that into another arpeggio, G minor 7. And then finally, we're going to add another one, which is B flat major 7 with a little lead in. So those 3 arpeggios, if you want to learn more about why those 3 work, check out the video I did on Benson's Secret of the 2 Chords. So all 3 of those arpeggios, D minor 7, G minor 7, B flat major 7, work great. You can link them together over B flat major 7. All right, let's move on to the second part of this video, which is looking at some specific examples from Benson himself. So this is a very short minor 2-5 lick from Benson, minor 2-5 to D minor. Really good one to know, and it's an example of even number of notes per string. So we have 4 notes, 2 notes, and 2 notes. Now I'd say maybe 70 to 80% of the time when we have these even number of notes per string, the phrase itself starts on that upbeat. So it just, for whatever reason, will land us on the right resolution by doing it that way. So you don't want to start this on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And see, when we do that, our last note is an upbeat, and it's much stronger to just start on an upbeat and have the last resolution of our phrase land on the downbeat. So we get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and next measure 1. That's a little tip for how you can get these to work in your own improvisations. Now let's take a look at the next example, which is the sweep and slide. This one's coming from a longer 2-5 lick from Benson on Blue Bossa over A flat 7. So in this example, we're actually using the same exact shape for the sweep and slide arpeggio that we do in the line that I came up with, where we slide like that, but for A flat 7. The way I would think about this shape for the sweep and slide is you start on the 3rd of the dominant chord. So if we want A flat 7, the 3rd is C. So I'm starting on C, and then I go up a minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. That shape. I'm not really thinking about the notes here, I'm just thinking about this shape. You could use your first finger with the roll and slide. If you use your ring finger, it sets you up for that pivot arpeggio. So for this pivot arpeggio example, we have another same minor 2-5 to D minor, coming on Stella. What's interesting about this pivot arpeggio is Benson's treating that whole 2-5 as if it's A7. So we start on C sharp to E to G to A. That's all notes from A7, right? The third, the fifth, the flat 7, and the root. Then we get this little bluesy E flat, which is, you know, flat 5 of the minor 7 flat 5, or the flat 9 of the A7. From there, just coming back down to resolve on the third of D minor. Pretty simple concept here that we're working with, but what's great about it is when you start connecting these, when you start combining these techniques, which we'll look at in the third part, that's where the magic happens, and that's where a lot of the personality of Benson comes through, using these standard bebop ideas. Okay, so this line from Benson, really common type of line that he plays. One thing that he does a ton is starting off with chromaticism, so 4 notes in a row, chromatic, actually 5, starting with the A. And then the last 4 notes, when he wants to resolve, he uses this 4-note diminished pattern. Benson does this time and time again. That diminished pattern is his way of really strongly resolving. In many other examples, he'll continue doing the chromaticism if he needs to extend into the next measure. But then that last bit, again, when he wants to resolve, 4-note diminished pattern. 2 ways you can do it. You can do it 4 notes on one string, like we've seen before, right, when we were doing the master line. That kind of thing. It slides you down this way. If you want to stay in position, you do 2 notes per string. And we split. We don't go further down. We just stay here. So if you want to move down further, you do 4 notes per string, move you fast down here. If you want to stay in position, 2 notes per string. And use it at the end when you want to resolve. Okay, so in this one I cheated a little bit and grabbed one that also starts with a pivot arpeggio. But really what's going on here is an E minor 7 arpeggio, right? Linking into a C major 7 arpeggio. So that's the double arpeggio. We're using E minor 7, in this case, as a pivot, going into C major 7. Now Benson ends this with sort of a classic bluesy type of major blues idea. But the way he ascends up many times on his ideas is arpeggio into a different arpeggio. The mistake people make is they will do the same arpeggio. They do E minor 7 into E minor 7. And it sounds a little bit obvious that you're going to go into another octave of that. Now, it's definitely done. I'm not saying it's never done. But it does, to me, and probably to Benson, sound better to link slightly different arpeggios that are all part of the same family. Okay, so for this third part, we're going to look at 3 combination lines combining some of these different techniques. And I actually put together an entire jazz lines palette with 35 ideas like this within the Chase Guitar Academy. And also, I'm going to be releasing video lessons for these jazz lines palette for Benson within the George Benson Master Study. So again, check out the links below and just check out a free trial. No risk to you. You can cancel with 1 click. Okay, so this first idea combines 3 things in a very short line. We're going to have a pivot arpeggio, we're going to do a sweep and slide arpeggio, and then we're going to do even number of notes per string. This is sort of a classic way Benson will play an arpeggio into a chromatic idea. So let's take a listen. So there's a lot of concepts going on with just this simple thing. Pivot arpeggio. We start on A flat, we're over F minor, A flat to C, E flat to G. That is our A flat major 7 arpeggio, but pivot. Within there, we also have then the slide. We're doing C minor, we're part of that A flat major 7, and we slide it down. And now from here, we already had 2 notes on that string, so our next string, we're going to use just 2 notes. You could keep going, make it 4 notes. Right? That kind of thing is how Benson gets that amazing flow that he has, the phrasing. It's the combination of these techniques. All right, our second line, this is probably my favorite one of the group, is from Stella by Starlight. And we're going to do a sweep and slide arpeggio into even number of notes per string into that 4-note diminished pattern to cap it off, like I said we do. All right, so let's check this out. This is over G7 altered. Okay, this idea, especially if I played it faster, is part of what Benson's virtuosity, that kind of like speed that we start hearing. And broken down simply, sweep and slide, we have that diminished arpeggio, B, D, F, A flat, as if it's G7, flat 9. Slide, even number of notes per string, so 4 notes just chromatically. And now this is where the theory guys would say, oh, but you're playing G flat over the G7. That does not matter. That is completely wrong. I'm not going to get into it and get sidetracked. But we just have 4 notes per string. Then 2 notes. Then 4 notes. Wait, inside there though, if you notice, we had that B, B flat, A flat, G. That's that 4-note diminished pattern. So again, sweep and slide, even number of notes per string, diminished pattern. He has 2 more beats to get to, so he just keeps going chromatically down. All together, you get an amazing fast line over G7 altered. All right, this last one is a short minor 2-5, going to C minor, really common. We're going to combine pivot, sweep and slide, and the 4-note diminished pattern all together. Within that, we also have some other melodic ideas going on. Let's check it out. So starting off, we have this minor 2-5, playing around with the A flat, G, and F, until we get to E flat. Now here we do a pivot down to G, and when we come up, we're using this augmented triad, G7 augmented, G augmented, which works good as like a G7 sharp 5. We sweep and slide it down to D, and then we had that combination, the E flat, D, C, and B, is that 4-note diminished pattern that we saw earlier. So hopefully you can see that these ideas, they overlap within the concepts. Pivot goes into sweep and slide, goes into diminished or even number of notes per string. They're not next to each other, they overlap with each other. There's a lot more to discuss with George Benson. That's why I created this whole master study. Hope you'll check it out. I think it's really, really great. And it's something I plan on doing for a bunch of other jazz guitarists as well. Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, Pat Metheny, John Schofield, all of these guys I will eventually be making a master study for. So if you want to check that out, if that sounds interesting to you, Chase's Guitar Academy, you get a 7-day free trial. Hope to see you there.